Long-running content like this weekly podcast requires a methodical and systematic approach to repurposing. But what if you're not sharing weekly content? Now, content created in seasons needs a different repurposing approach. Stay tuned to hear my top tips for maximising series-based content even after you're no longer releasing new episodes. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximise your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, founder of Content 10x, and this week I'm talking all about repurposing a season of content versus repurposing long-running content. So on the surface, repurposing content when you produce it is the same whether the content is part of a 10-episode season or an ongoing weekly piece of content. But when the season ends, that doesn't have to mean that it will stop generating results and disappear into the ether. In fact, there are ways to ensure that your series keeps providing value to your audience in between seasons. And of course, this is all about maximising your content ROI, so your content return on investment. So what do I mean with series or season versus long-running or ongoing content? Well, many businesses take a series-based approach to creating content. That's a really common thing to do. Now, they may not have the capacity or desire to create a certain type of content all year round. So let's say a podcast or video show, but they still want to produce and share content that connects with their audience and helps them reach their business goals and become known for what they want to be known for within their space. So a great way to do this is to produce content in seasons rather than week on week like this. The Content 10x podcast is week on week, but we're talking about when you would launch a season, so say a 10 episode or a 15 episode season. And it's important to mention that it's definitely a bit of a compromise. If you aim to grow using content, then there's really no better method than to create and distribute content as consistently and as frequently as possible. But sometimes that's just not possible or even the best approach. And in that case, content released in seasons is certainly a lot better than not creating and sharing content at all. And we support a number of businesses with this approach, and it's the perfect approach for them. So we're working with Linode, who are a cloud computing company, and we worked with them to launch their Craft of Code podcast season 1, and now we're working on season 2. And a season made perfect sense for them because Craft of Code is sharing customer success stories where they interview customers, and they don't do that all year round. Another client of ours is Molecular, an operational AI company, and we work with them on their seasons of content for their Leading with Data podcast. And again, it works much better for them than a weekly show. And actually this year, I did something a little different myself, and I shared my first ever series, but this was a little bit different to what I just explained because it was part of the Content 10x podcast called the It Started With Content series. So we embarked with It Started With Content as a monthly episode that formed part of a 10-part series, but like I said, the episodes were actually put out as part of my weekly show. So 1 in 4 episodes of this, the Content 10x podcast, were the It Started With Content episodes. So it was kind of a series running within a long running show, but that was the podcast side of things. It wasn't just podcast episodes, they were videos as well. So this was a standalone video series on YouTube with its own It Started With Content playlist on our channel. And the series featured stories of businesses and brands that had grown from someone taking this brave, bold step to create content, and it featured people like Joe Wicks, Marie Forleo and Zach King, to just name a few. But after 10 episodes, I decided to wrap up the season. It was brilliant for showcasing all of these stories, and I know that each episode holds immense value for creators and business owners who want to hear just really inspiring examples of how content can take their brand to the next level. But unlike the Content 10x podcast as a whole, I never intended the series to be a permanent ongoing feature. It was very much a limited video series that was also podcast episodes as well, rather than a long-running series. So something that I want to share my views on in this episode is if you release content in seasons as opposed to weekly content, how does your repurposing change? And what can you do to keep maximising your content's value? And this is so important if you want to maintain fans in between your seasons. So I have 6 repurposing tips for your seasons, and you can think of this a bit like a 6-step process to repurposing your podcast or video season. So the first step, and a key thing to bear in mind, is that keeping your content evergreen is the number one way to ensure your content will always be valuable to your audience. Now, I know that's not always possible. It depends on the topics that you cover. So I recommend an evergreen approach if it makes sense. So make it timeless if you can. And always try to segment the content for optimum repurposing as well. So try and have the same segments in each episode that you can then repurpose. So that's number 1. Make it evergreen and segment the episodes if you can. Second, once you've created the season, the next step is to publish it in an easy to access location. So whether you're releasing every episode individually or if you land all episodes at once Netflix style, you will want to create a page on your website where you can have all your episodes from that season in one place. It's brilliant for your website's SEO, and it also makes it very easy for anyone to locate all of the content at once for that season. And there are other solutions for curating content into seasons, like creating a playlist on YouTube if you've created videos, or if you have a podcast, then some podcast hosts like Captivate allow you to create a playlist within them as well. On Instagram, you could create a guide where you can showcase each episode of the season. And there are other platform features that you could use on social to showcase your season. Hey, just a little break from this podcast episode to ask you a question. Would you like one single place that you can go to that provides you with everything you need to be able to implement the best practices in content repurposing for your video content, your podcast episodes, and your social media content today? To help you get more value from the content that you create, get more time back, and help you reach more people than you ever thought possible. If so, then you are going to love the Content 10x Toolkit. The toolkit is full of video tutorials, templates, checklists, swipe files, step-by-step guides and more that shows you how to repurpose your content in the best ways possible today. No more Googling, no more figuring it out yourself. We provide you with everything that you need to become a content repurposing pro. If this sounds like something that would interest you, then go check out the Content 10x Toolkit at content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, and back to this week's episode. The third step is to repurpose each episode into plenty of content. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say repurpose. So if you have a video series, could it be repurposed into a podcast series too? That's something that, as I mentioned, I did with It Started With content videos that were also podcast episodes. Our clients, Linode, Molecular, they did that too. When we worked with Jay Bear on his Talk Triggers season, that was all videos that became podcasts. So think about that. Maybe it is just podcast audio and not video, and that's absolutely fine. Also consider, could you create blog posts from every episode and create social media content? So graphics, videos, audiograms, text posts, and then you'll build up this excellent library to keep sharing content from for months to come. And I recommend having a set process that you follow for every episode and making sure that you stay consistent with it, thus creating a big library of content just for that season. And that library could be enough content to share in between different seasons to keep the content flowing and keep it front of mind. And in terms of having that system that you follow, the repurposing system for every episode, think about using a project management software like Trello or Asana or ClickUp or Basecamp, or keep it really simple and have an Excel spreadsheet, but have it all written down and make sure that you tick off every episode and each repurposing step that you follow for each episode and build up that repurposed content library. Okay, the next step is to incorporate this social content into your content calendar. So make sure you space it out evenly. You can promote one episode at a time, mix them up, or take any approach that works for you. You could experiment and see if multiple posts to one episode in a week drives lots of traffic compared to, say, multiple posts to different episodes. The key is to make sure that you're planning on continually promoting the episodes and staying front of mind. And it's not just about promotion of those core episodes as well, so the core content. Some posts should be pure value add, so not promoting anything, but just for engagement and adding value on the social platforms. So that's the next tip, incorporate all of this content into your content calendar. Now the penultimate step is to monitor the performance of your social media posts. The ones that do really well can go into your content treasure trove, and you can try posting them again in the future to generate even more results. So you may want to do an entirely new promotion of the whole season sometime after it went live. So say 6 months or a year after that season went live, you could promote it again like it's new all over again. And in that case, you could dig into the treasure trove and share the highest performing posts again. And this can work really well if you are, say, launching season 2 and you want to do some build up content into the launch of season 2 by sharing lots of the best bits from season 1. Then dig into that treasure trove, look at the content that people loved from season 1 and get sharing that in the build up to season 2. The final tip is related to those who have special guests on their show. So always remember to share the assets with them, and also to tag them in your posts as well. So don't over tag, but do tag these guests in some of the posts. Getting in front of new audiences can be difficult, but getting social shares from guests or others in your industry is a fantastic way to get more eyes on your content. Just as your audience has grown since you first posted that episode, your guest's audience will have grown too. So capitalise on your new audience and theirs by tagging them in your repurposed and reshared content and asking them nicely as well if they would mind re-promoting your episodes. And as I mentioned, share your assets. You never know, they may go and share them with their audience as well as retweeting and sharing and commenting on your posts. And that's it. So they are my top tips and recommendations for increasing the return on investment of seasons versus ongoing content. It just requires a bit more overall project management and more outside of the box thinking to keep the content going for longer. So I hope that's given you some inspiration. If you are thinking of launching a season, a video or podcast or blog season even, versus committing to ongoing weekly content, then I hope that has inspired you that it's a worthwhile thing to do. You can repurpose each episode, you can plan and create lots of content, have a treasure trove. You've got a great plan for then marketing and shouting out and building hype for future seasons, and you can have a plan to stay front of mind in between the seasons as well. So it's all about repurposing to maximize your seasonal content. And I hope if you aren't planning on having seasons, that this has just inspired you and reminded you of the best practices for repurposing the content that you do create, whether that's weekly or occasional or seasonal. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Content 10X podcast. If you want help with your content repurposing, then Content 10X offer a fully done for you end-to-end content repurposing service. So if you want to hear more about that, head to content10x.com content10x.com/services. And also, please do check out my book, content10x.com/book, or you can just head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Audible and you will find the book there. It really is the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content. And do give me a follow, a share, comment, engage with me on social media. I'm at Content10x on all of the social media platforms. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe on your favourite app so you never miss an episode. And you can also subscribe to the weekly Content 10x newsletter to get the episode delivered to your inbox, along with loads more tips and advice on repurposing, exclusive content news, offers and more. Head to content10x.com/newsletter to become a Content 10x insider. I promise you won't regret it. And if you want help with your repurposing, then check out our fully end-to-end content repurposing service here at Content 10x. I promise you're in good hands with us if you want to maximize your content but leave the hard work to experts so that you can focus on your business. So just head to content10x.com to find out about everything that we could do to support you. And if you prefer a more DIY approach, or you'd like to empower your team, or just learn more about repurposing, then do get a copy of my book, Content 10x, on Amazon, and check out the Content 10x Toolkit. That's at content10x.com/toolkit. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.